There was only his eyes on hers, the space between them charged, their breaths colliding. She should have stepped back. She knew she should, but her body betrayed her, leaning forward, just enough to cross into dangerous territory. "Lucas!" Her voice trembled. "We can't!" His jaw tightened. He searched her face as though looking for permission, for denial, for anything that would break the spell. His hand lifted, hovering near her cheek, but never touching, as if he knew that one brush would unravel everything. "You're right," he said hoarsely. "We can't." And yet he didn't move. Neither did she. They stood suspended, every nerve begging for the line to be crossed, every thought screaming that it would ruin everything. A cry shattered it. "Daddy!" Sloane's small voice drifted from the nursery, sleepy and fragile. The spell broke. Lucas jerked back, dragging in a harsh breath. Christine turned quickly, her hands shaking as she pushed past him. Inside, Sloane sat up in bed, rubbing her eyes. "The storm is loud," she whispered. Christine tucked the blanket tighter around her. "Shh, baby. The storm can't get you here. You're safe." Lucas stood in the doorway, watching. His shoulders were tense, his face shadowed. Christine knew he wouldn't step closer. Not now. Not after what had almost happened. Banana Island didn't look like Lagos to Christine Channing. It looked like a promise people whispered to themselves in the dark, of gates that opened without question, of water that shone like polished silver, of lives so comfortable that pain felt like rumor. The black sedan turned past a hedge sculpted into the initials LM, rolled up the driveway bordered by travelers' palms, and stopped before a glass and stone mansion with a view of Five Cowries Creek. The afternoon light lay warm on the facade. Inside, she could already see shadows moving, someone pacing, someone waiting. Her palms were damp. She wiped them against her skirt and told herself she had survived worse. The sharp beds in the foster home, the quiet of nights that stretched too long, the vertigo of opening a final notice with no money left to pretend. This was just an interview. It was just a job. She would keep her breath steady, her voice calm, and her heart locked away where no one could break it again. The front door opened. A woman in a soft cream blouse and slate pencil skirt stood there, the kind of woman who radiated order and warm authority at once. "Christine?" she asked. "Yes," Christine said, trying to smile. "Thank you for—" "I'm Valerie Maxwell." The woman offered a hand. "Lucas's sister. Thank you for coming." Her voice lowered as she glanced over her shoulder. "And thank you for being on time. We've had some chaos." Chaos. Christine stepped into cool air scented with citrus and lilies. The foyer's high ceiling lifted her gaze, whether she wanted it to or not. Beyond the glass, water glittered. To the left, a double staircase curled like a ribbon. She heard the faint echo of laughter. Childish, quick, the kind that made an ache rise behind her ribs. "How old are they?" she asked. "4," Valerie said. "Twins. Sloane and Sawyer." She smiled. "They pretend to be dragons at least twice a day." Christine let herself smile back. "High standards. They can be particular." Valerie's eyes warmed. "But when they say yes, it's real." They crossed into a living room where Lagos luxury took a restrained breath. Art that didn't shout, a piano near the windows, a framed charcoal sketch of 2 infants, perfect heads touching. On a console, a row of toy animals stood like a tiny parliament. A small purple shoe lay abandoned under a bar stool. Christine wanted, urgently and without permission, to sit on that rug and line up the animals by height and color until the twins came to reclaim them. She folded her hands to stop the impulse. "What would my responsibilities be, exactly?" "Everything that keeps them safe, loved, and curious," Valerie said. "School runs to Elysian Academy, play therapy twice a week in Sussex, swim lessons on Saturdays. They have schedules, but they need softness between the schedules. Structure, not rigidity." I understand. Christine did understand. In the foster home, structure was survival. Softness, when it appeared, felt like a miracle. Before Valerie could reply, a door slammed somewhere in the house. A man's voice cut across the air, low and furious. The kind of voice built for boardrooms and silence alike. "I don't care," it snapped, closer with each word. "Get her out of my house and find someone else." Valerie flinched. Christine didn't move. The voice became a man, tall, shoulders cut like suit lines, even in a black polo. Skin the rich brown of Lagos sunsets. Jaw shadowed as if sleep were a rumor in his life. Lucas Maxwell didn't pause in the threshold. His eyes, dark, glazed with anger, swept over Christine once the way a blade might test light. "Lucas," Valerie said sharply, stepping forward. "She's the first nanny the kids accepted without a fight. We'll find someone else." He spoke to his sister, but his gaze stayed on Christine, daring her to flinch, to break into apologies he'd never earn. "For now, get that piece of shit out of my house. I can't—" The word cracked, raw. "I can't stand her." "Piece of shit." The phrase landed with a quiet thud in Christine's chest, and then kept falling, through ribs and memory and the thin scaffolding of the day's courage. It should have shattered her. It almost did. Valerie's hand closed around Christine's wrist, a steadying, human touch. "Lucas," she said, voice steel. "Enough." The twins chose that moment to barrel into the room, as if tethered to the sound of storms and required to cut them in half. A boy and a girl, the girl with a puff of curls corralled by a lemon bow, the boy with a dimple so deep it looked like trouble. Sloane wore a cape. Sawyer wore mismatched socks and a dinosaur sticker on his knee. "Auntie Val," Sloane cried, skidding to a stop. She saw Christine and froze, eyes bright. "Is she the dragon tamer?" Christine knelt without thinking, meeting the girl's gaze at eye level. "Only on Wednesdays," she said softly. "On Fridays I negotiate with griffins." "Why? Do you need help with dragons now, or can we schedule them for later?" Sawyer leaned in, considering her like a tiny CEO. "Can you read stories with the big voices?" "I'm afraid I'm famous for my terrible voices," she whispered, "but if you don't tell anyone, I'll try." The boy's mouth tilted toward a smile, and then, like the weather turning, the tension in the room shifted. Christine felt Lucas watching her, the heat of his disapproval folding into a colder, more dangerous scrutiny. She didn't look at him. "Snack?" Valerie asked, bright with relief. "Kitchen now. Dragons need grapes." They migrated to the kitchen, a sleek expanse of stone and light, with a view of the creek, and beyond it, the restless city. Christine washed her hands, small medical ritual, then set grapes in bowls, trimmed strawberries, halved little sandwiches in the shape of stars. Sloane perched on a stool and lined star halves in patterns. Sawyer narrated a battle between a pea and a carrot. Valerie's shoulders dropped. Lucas entered last. He didn't speak. Not to Christine anyway. He moved through the space like gravity, the staff stepping a fraction to the side without looking like they had. Once Christine would have resented the way power changed the air. Now she was mostly tired and a little angry. At debt, at fate, at beautiful men who thought cruelty cost them nothing. "Mr. Maxwell," she said, turning to face him finally. Her voice was steady, polite. "If you'd like to continue the interview, I'm ready." It was the wrong thing to say, or the right one. His brows lifted by a thread. "Interview?" Christine's fingers tightened around the knife. She set it down. "I assumed I still had one." Valerie exhaled, relieved. "Yes, you do." Lucas's gaze dropped briefly to the twins. So quick she would have missed it if she weren't studying him with all the precision she'd ever used to survive. Pride, fear, a fierce love that licked at the edges of his self-control. When he looked back at her, his expression was blank again. "What are your references?" he asked. "I cared for 3 families in Ikoyi and 6, Christine said. 2 sets of twins, 1 child with sensory processing challenges. I can provide letters. I also sing badly, but with commitment." Sloane laughed. Lucas didn't. "Why did you leave your last family?" "They moved to Johannesburg. They offered to take me." She kept her chin up. "But I needed to stay in Lagos." "Why?" He didn't soften the word. Because debt. Because a hospital bill with numbers that made her see stars for a woman who'd once shared her bunk and called her sister when no one else did. Because she couldn't fail again. My life is here, Christine said simply. He studied her as if the right angle would reveal a lie. You'll sign an NDA. You'll respect boundaries. You'll be invisible when required and immovable when necessary. I know the difference, she said. Sloane slid off her stool and came to stand beside Christine, small fingers finding the fabric of her skirt. You can sit with us at bedtime, she announced. Even if Uncle Lucas is grumpy, he's mostly grumpy because he drinks boring water. Something in Lucas's mouth twitched. Christine dared a glance. He looked away first. Trial week, he said. Starting now. If they cry when you leave tonight, you can come back tomorrow. Lucas, Valerie began. He didn't look at his sister. Terms are on paper. Salary is what it needs to be. Don't make me regret this. Christine's heart did a strange, traitorous thing. Regret, as if letting her in, even this inch, cost him blood. I won't, she said, and it felt like a vow she'd make to a cliff before jumping. I'll focus on the kids. She could ignore him. She would. She must. But as Sloane tugged her to see the secret dragon lair under the staircase, Christine felt the weight of Lucas Maxwell's gaze on her back, cold and burning at once like standing in air-conditioned sunlight. She followed the twins, laughter rising like a promise she hadn't expected to make. Behind her, Valerie said softly, thank you, and Christine understood she hadn't meant the snacks. Piece of shit, the words echoed, dull and distant now, like thunder traveling over water. Christine held Sloane's hand a little tighter. She had not chosen to be here for him. She was here for two small people who believed in dragons and star sandwiches, and for the girl she had been, the one who wanted a home so badly it hurt to breathe. Okay, she told the twins, crouching to peer into their lair. Let's talk terms with your dragons. Wednesdays at 4? Deal, Sawyer said solemnly and shook her hand. Across the kitchen, Lucas's phone lit with a message he didn't answer. He stared at the three of them, at a picture that somehow didn't fit and yet felt precisely, painfully right, and wondered when a stranger had walked into his house and made the silence blink. He didn't want this. He didn't want her. But he wanted them happy. And right now they were. That, he told himself, would be enough. It wouldn't be. The day had stretched itself long by the time Christine tucked Sloane's lemon bow into a drawer and Sawyer's mismatched socks into the laundry basket. The twins were yawning between bursts of dragon growls, the kind of yawns that made their eyes water and their bodies collapse mid-battle. Outside the glass walls of the mansion, Lagos evening glittered with its usual contradictions, yachts sliding across the lagoon like jewels on black silk, while the hum of traffic beyond Ikoyi Bridge rose and fell like a distant drum. Christine hadn't expected peace here, but she hadn't expected belonging either. Yet when Sloane leaned into her side and asked for just one more story with the terrible voices, Christine felt something in her chest tighten and break. She perched on the edge of the bed, the twins wrapped in blankets patterned with golden stars. The book was old, its corners bent. Valerie whispered that their mother had never read to them, that bedtime was always nanny business, clinical and quick. Christine turned the first page, cleared her throat, and launched into her famously bad attempt at an ogre voice. The twins collapsed into laughter so loud she thought they'd wake the house staff. Sawyer clutched his side. Sloane buried her face in her pillow, and Christine, despite the ache of debts waiting outside these mansion walls, despite the memory of Lucas's words stabbing at her ribs, smiled and kept reading. By the time she finished, Sloane's breaths had slowed into the fragile rhythm of sleep. Sawyer resisted longer, whispering, "Don't leave." Christine smoothed his curls. "I'll be right outside." He nodded, heavy-lidded, and finally surrendered to sleep. For a while, Christine sat there, staring at their perfect stillness. She thought about the children she'd lost track of in the foster system, about how names had disappeared as quickly as they'd been learned. She thought about her mother, a face blurred in memory, and about the part of herself that had once believed in being chosen. A floorboard creaked. She turned. Lucas stood in the doorway. He didn't cross the threshold. He only leaned one shoulder against the frame, his arms folded. His shirt sleeves were rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms lined with quiet strength. "Do they always go down that easily for you?" His voice was lower now, without the sharpness of earlier, but still edged like steel. Christine stood, keeping her voice calm. "Children don't need easy. They need to be heard." His gaze flicked to the twins, softened a fraction, then snapped back to her. "And what about you, Miss Channing? What do you need?" The question caught her off guard. She held her ground. "I'm not here for me, Mr. Maxwell. I'm here for them." For a long moment, silence filled the room. Only the faint Lagos wind against the windows moved. Lucas's jaw clenched, and he stepped back, gesturing toward the hall. She followed him into the corridor. The mansion at night was quieter, the chandeliers dimmed, the marble floors reflecting shadows instead of light. He stopped near the landing that overlooked the living room. "You'll find I'm not patient," he said. "I don't like games, and I don't like strangers pretending they belong here." Christine crossed her arms, though her pulse hammered. "Then perhaps you shouldn't have hired me." His eyes narrowed. "You think I had a choice?" "Yes," she said softly. "You always have a choice." For a second she saw it, the crack in his armor. The weight in his gaze wasn't just anger, it was grief, loneliness, something jagged that kept him awake at night. Then the mask slid back, hard and impenetrable. "You'll do your job," he said. "Nothing more." Christine held his stare. "That's what I intend." But when she walked away, she knew it wasn't true. The warmth of Sloane's hand in hers, the echo of Sawyer's sleepy whisper, had already tangled her something she couldn't simply clock out of. The storm arrived around midnight. Christine woke to the sound of rain hammering against glass, thunder rolling across the lagoon like a war drum. She thought first of the children. Slipping into her robe, she hurried down the hallway. The twins' room was dark, but inside she found Sawyer sitting upright, eyes wide, clutching his blanket. Sloane whimpered in her sleep, twisting against a nightmare. Christine crossed the room, heart racing. She gathered Sawyer against her chest, whispering, "It's just thunder. It can't touch you here." Her voice was steady, the kind of steadiness she had once begged for as a child. Sloane jolted awake with a cry. Christine reached for her too, drawing both small bodies into her arms. She began to hum, off-key, quiet, but insistent. The door opened again. Lucas. He froze when he saw the sight. His twins in the nanny's arms. Christine bent protectively over them, her face lit by flashes of lightning through the curtains. Something in him faltered. He stepped closer, instinctively, as if pulled by a force he couldn't name. "They're terrified," Christine whispered, not looking at him. "Sit with us." Lucas's breath caught. He'd never been asked to sit in fear with anyone, always to fix, to command, to silence. But something in the way Sawyer clung to Christine, something in the way Sloane's sobs quieted under her hum, dragged him forward. He sat on the edge of the bed. His presence was unfamiliar to them like this, unarmored. Sawyer reached a small hand toward his father. Lucas hesitated, then enclosed it in his own. Christine felt the shift like a tide changing. For a moment, she almost believed this man could be gentle. The storm raged outside, but in that room, there was a fragile peace. Christine kept humming. Lucas kept holding on. The twins finally drifted back to sleep between them. And when their eyes met across the small forms of Sloane and Sawyer, something dangerous flickered. A recognition neither wanted, both feared. Christine looked away first. She knew what it meant, and she wasn't ready for it. Not now. Not when her heart already felt too close to breaking. Morning came dressed in glass and gold. Banana Island glimmered as if the storm had licked it clean. The creek beyond the terrace lay smooth as silk, boats stitching quiet lines through the water. In the kitchen, sunlight fell in pale rectangles across the stone floor, and the espresso machine hissed like a contented animal. Christine arrived before the house was fully awake. She tied her hair into a loose knot, washed her hands, and scanned the chalkboard in the pantry, where staff logged small miracles. Sloan likes mango again. Sawyer, no green peas, yes to edamame. Remember Friday swim bag? She could feel the echo of last night pressed under her ribs. Thunder, small hands. Lucas sitting on the bed as if it might swallow him whole. Chef Tunde set down a tray. "Madam Christine," he said, eyes kind, "you survived." She smiled. "Barely. We're doing banana pancakes and strawberries?" "For the dragons," he confirmed, flipping one with unnecessary elegance. The twins padded in wearing matching linen pajamas. Sloane's lemon bow reinstated, Sawyer's dimple operational. They saw Christine and made a beeline, like magnets remembering what they were made for. "You stayed," Sloane breathed, pressing her face to Christine's hip. "As promised," Christine said, smoothing a hand down her hair. "And I negotiated a treaty with the storm. It won't bother you in the daytime." Sawyer slid onto a stool. "Can we have the terrible voices again tonight?" "We'll see how your schedule treats us," Christine teased, then reached for 2 small water glasses. "Hydration first. Dragons who don't drink water have crunchy roars." They giggled and drank. Lucas entered without announcement. It wasn't footsteps that revealed him so much as gravity, the way everyone seemed to shift a degree to accommodate his orbit. He wore a charcoal suit that made the room look underdressed. The shadow of sleep still haunted his jawline. His gaze swept the kitchen, pausing on the twins, then Christine. For a heartbeat, something like the memory of last night flickered between them. He extinguished it. "Good morning," Valerie said, appearing with her phone and a stack of folders. "School run at 8, therapy pickup at 2, board call at 11. Lucas nodded once, already scrolling through messages. "And the driver?" "Waiting." Christine set plates on the island. "Sloane, Sawyer, 15-minute warning. We brush teeth after pancakes." "Lemon toothpaste," Sloane warned. "Mint is betrayal," Sawyer added. "Noted," Christine said solemnly. They ate. The children told a breathless tale about a dragon who refused to share grapes. Christine deployed the diplomatic toolkit of a small nation. Tunde slid extra pancakes onto the plate when Sawyer's eyes went wide with longing and the rules allowed it. When everyone's hands were sticky and their mouths were strawberries, Christine whisked them toward the hallway. "Teeth, shoes, water bottles. Let's make a parade." The parade dissolved into a standard skirmish over sock choices, recovered when Christine allowed Sawyer's mismatched preference as long as shoe Velcro aligned. Sloane requested the lemon bow be even more lemon, a mathematical quandary solved by a second, subtler ribbon beneath the first. They were at the door when Lucas's voice stopped them. "Miss Channing." She turned. He stood by the console, watch catching the light, his features arranged into something colder than neutrality. "A word." Christine glanced down at the twins. 30 seconds, she promised them, then faced him in the foyer where light sliced across marble like a compass. "We need structure," he said, hands sliding into his pockets. It sounded like a confession he would only allow to be called a demand. "There are rules in this house for a reason. I don't want surprises." "Agreed," she said. "Structure is a love language." His mouth twitched. "This afternoon, when they're back from therapy, my office. We'll make things clear." "I'll bring a list," she said before she could stop herself. "A list. For the children," she said lightly, "and for the adults." The slightest lift of his brow. "Noted." They stared at each other for a fraction too long. Then the twins blew the moment to pieces by announcing they were chronically late dragons. Christine herded them out, the driver opening the door of the black S-Class with a small bow. Lagos gave them the city's Monday face. Ozumba Mbadawe pulsed. LEDs blinked over sleek storefronts. The lagoon flashed between gaps in buildings like a coin someone kept palming. Sloane quizzed Christine on the difference between blue and cerulean. Sawyer demanded an ogre voice for zebra crossings. By the time they reached Elysian Academy, glass and greenery, the kind of place where futures were curated as much as taught. Sloane had forgiven mint toothpaste's existence conditionally, and Sawyer had rechristened 3 traffic lights after dinosaurs. At drop-off, a knot of parents hovered in linen and silk, sunglasses large enough to be statements. Christine felt eyes, new face, new figure in the Maxwell orbit. She kept her posture easy, her smile small. She let the twins lead. Sloane slipped her hand into Christine's. Sawyer tilted his chin in that particular Maxwell way and said, "We're brave." "Yes," Christine agreed, kneeling to their level. "Remember, your bodies are yours. If you need space, you get to ask for it. If you need a hug, you can ask for that, too." They nodded gravely. Sloane hugged her without being prompted. Sawyer pretended not to, then did, quick and fierce. As she straightened, Christine caught herself scanning for paparazzi. The Maxwells were not gossip fodder by preference, but money attracted attention like sugar water attracted ants. She made a mental note: routes in and out, shadows to avoid, the staff door at the rear. The car ride back was quieter. Lagos slid past her window, less like a movie and more like a mountain she had decided to climb. She thought of the list she'd promised to bring. She thought of words said and unsaid in thunderstorms. She thought of the way the twins had fit against her, a secret that felt like a blessing and a liability at once. Lucas's office looked like Power had hired a designer and told it to be tasteful. Floor-to-ceiling books without dust, a black piano in the corner, a massive desk of matte oak with a veined stone top, as if the earth itself had signed off on his decisions. Lagos stretched beyond the glass. He stood when she entered, not courtesy, readiness. Valerie sat in an armchair with a pen, the kind of sister who turned fights into agreements for a living. "Let's begin," Lucas said. Christine set a thin notebook on the table. "I divided the rules into 3 columns," she said. "Kids, household, respect." He blinked. "Respect? We'll get there." She flipped to the page. "Kids," she began, voice steady. "Bedtime is non-negotiable. 7:30 wind down, 8 lights out. 1 book each. You can read a third if you do the voices." Valerie's mouth quirked. Lucas's did not. "Food," Christine continued. "We try everything once. No battles over bites. Snacks are fruit and protein. Treats are earned, not bribed. Water is a rhythm, not a negotiation." Lucas glanced at the list, then at her. "School? Drop-off is you if you can, me if you can't," Christine said. "Pick-up is me, unless there's a reason to change. They do better when they know who's coming. Therapy is not punishment. Swim is joy. Household," she went on. "The nursery is a no-yell zone. Staff knocks, adults lower their voices before entering. Broken toys get fixed at ceremonies, not lectures. Screens are for planes and rainstorms." Valerie was actually smiling now. "You run a tiny nation," she murmured. Christine didn't look away from Lucas. "Now, respect." He sat back by a millimeter. "I understand boundaries," she said. "I'll sign your NDA. I won't speak to press. I won't trade on this family's name. I will be invisible when I should, and immovable when necessary." She laced her fingers together to stop them shaking. "But I will not be insulted in front of the children or the staff. Not ever." Silence, stretched. Out on the creek, a boat engine purred, an indifferent metronome. Lucas's face didn't change at first. Then a muscle at his jaw shifted. "You're referring to this morning." "And last night," she said quietly. "Words matter, Mr. Maxwell, especially to little ears." Valerie found a sudden need to check her phone. She stood. "I'll give you 2 a minute," she said lightly, and slipped out. Christine held the line of his gaze. He could shatter her with 2 syllables if he chose. She had survived worse. She would survive this. He spoke finally, the words sounding like they had to fight to get out. "I was out of line." She nearly didn't breathe. He looked past her shoulder, out to the water. "I don't apologize easily. I don't say things I can't back with action. So here's an action. You have authority over the nursery and their schedule. If I disagree, we speak privately. Not in front of them, not like that. Relief moved through her so sharply it felt like pain. Thank you. I'm not doing it for you, he said, but his voice had lost its teeth. I know, she said, and didn't pretend it wasn't enough. He cleared his throat. Your salary is above market. I'll authorize in advance if you need it. No. It came out too fast. She softened it. Thank you. I'll wait for the first pay cycle. He studied her. Pride? Dignity, she corrected gently. Another beat. Anything else on your list? Yes. She turned the page. A family promise. Once a week, one meal where phones die and conversation lives. 30 minutes. No work talk. He exhaled a sound that might have been a laugh if laughter remembered how. You're negotiating against a CEO. I'm negotiating for 2 4-year-olds, she said. I like my odds. His eyes held hers. Fine. Sunday brunch. Saturday breakfast, she countered. Sundays become battlefields for Monday. Saturday is mercy. A pause. Saturday, he agreed. The corner of her mouth lifted. She closed the notebook. Then we have a deal. She turned to go, and he said her name like a compromise. Christine. She looked back. He didn't step closer. He didn't soften. But the next words were exactly precise. You shouldn't have had to hear that. It won't happen again. Piece of the memory tried to surface. She pressed it back under the new sentence and let it drown. Good, she said, because whether you like it or not, I belong here, as long as they need me. A flicker of something crossed his face. Recognition, maybe, or respect sharpened into attention. We'll see, he said, but it didn't sound like a threat anymore. Outside, the creek flashed. Somewhere in the house, Sloane laughed, a sound like a bell. Christine stood straighter. The list was just ink. The real rules would be written in the way the children slept and woke, in the temperature of Lucas's temper, in her ability to meet storms with song. For now, they had an agreement. For now, it was enough. It would have to be, until the past walked back in and rewrote every line. The Lagos skyline shimmered like a crown the night of the gala. Spotlights swept across the lagoon, drawing arcs of light over the water as black sedans and gleaming Bentleys lined the entrance to the Echo Atlantic Ballroom. Outside, a string quartet played beneath chandeliers suspended from temporary arches, the music wrapping itself around conversations carried out in French accents, British inflections, and Yoruba undertones. Christine tugged at the sleeve of her borrowed gown. Valerie had insisted it's important the twins have someone they trust close by. Lucas can't shield them and juggle the board tonight. And so here she was, stepping into a world that had never been meant for her, swathed in navy silk that shimmered every time she moved. Beside her, Sloane twirled in a miniature version of the same gown, while Sawyer adjusted the bow tie he'd declared suffocating but dignified. Their laughter steadied her nerves more than the glass of sparkling water she gripped like a lifeline. Lucas was already inside. Christine had seen him step out of the car, flanked by Valerie and 2 security men, a presence so sharp that conversation stalled when he passed. His suit was midnight black, the cut precise enough to look effortless. Even from a distance, Christine felt it. The gravity of him, the weight he carried, the walls he refused to let anyone see through. Stay close, she whispered to the twins as they entered. Remember, dragons breathe fire only when provoked. Sawyer grinned. Sloane whispered, then we'll keep our fire for emergencies. Inside, the ballroom was a glittering aquarium of Lagos elite. Oil magnates, tech giants, ministers' wives with diamonds heavy enough to anchor a ship. Waiters glided by with trays of champagne and canapes. The air smelled of wealth and ambition, perfume, polished wood, and the faint salt of the sea creeping in through the terrace doors. Christine's role was simple. Keep the twins calm, occupied, invisible when needed. She managed it for the first 30 minutes until Sloane's cape, smuggled under her dress, surfaced in a dramatic swirl near the dessert table. Sawyer, never one to be outdone, declared war on the macarons. The laughter that followed drew eyes. Too many eyes. Christine's stomach knotted. She bent down quickly, whispering fierce but gentle warnings. This is not the battlefield. Save it for later. Dragons don't start wars in castles. The twins obeyed reluctantly and clung to her hands. That was when she saw him. Lucas, across the room, in conversation with a minister from Abuja, his face carved in control. But his gaze flicked, unbidden, to the sight of Christine crouched between his children, her expression firm but warm. The smallest shift crossed his features. Pride, maybe, or hunger disguised as irritation. He excused himself moments later and crossed toward them, each step cutting through the crowd like a blade. Are they behaving? His tone was clipped, but his eyes searched his children first. Yes, Christine answered evenly. They're just dragons in disguise. Sloane smothered a giggle. Sawyer bit into a macaron with exaggerated innocence. Lucas's mouth twitched, the ghost of a smile, but it didn't reach his voice. Keep them close. I don't want another scene like last time. Christine stiffened. Last time. She didn't know the story, but the sting of comparison landed sharp. She rose to meet his gaze, her voice low. They're children, not employees. They'll make noise. They'll make moments. That's not failure. For a heartbeat, his eyes darkened, unreadable. Then someone called his name, and he turned away. It was halfway through the evening when everything went wrong. Christine had taken the twins to the terrace for fresh air, the lagoon breeze carrying away their fidgets. They pressed their noses to the glass railing, fascinated by the yachts glittering in the distance. She was just beginning to relax when the first flash went off. Cameras. Reporters tipped off had somehow breached security. They surged like sharks, shouting Lucas's name, Valerie's, and, worst of all, snapping photos of Sloane and Sawyer with Christine crouched protectively around them. Back inside, Christine whispered, pushing the twins toward the doors, but the questions flew fast. Mr. Maxwell, who's the new woman with your children? Is she replacing their mother? Lucas, are you hiding a relationship? The twins froze, frightened. Christine gathered them into her arms, shielding their faces, fury burning hot under her ribs. Then Lucas was there. He cut through the reporters with the force of a storm, his body angling in front of them, security men flanking. His voice was thunder, measured, dangerous. No photographs, not of my children. The reporters pressed harder. Questions multiplied, a hand shoved too close. Sawyer whimpered. Christine tightened her grip and, without thinking, raised her chin. Enough, she snapped, her voice slicing the night. Back away! You're terrifying them! The silence that followed was brief but absolute. Reporters blinked, startled by the ferocity of a woman they hadn't expected to speak. Christine held their gaze, daring them to push again. Security forced them back. The doors slammed shut. Inside, the ballroom had frozen. Dozens of wealthy eyes had witnessed everything, and in the center of it stood Christine, breathless, clutching Lucas Maxwell's children to her chest. For a long moment, Lucas just stared at her. His eyes weren't angry. They weren't cold. They were something far more dangerous. Recognition and hunger. Take them upstairs, he said finally, his voice like glass cracking. Now! Christine obeyed. But as she climbed the staircase with the twins clinging to her, she knew something had shifted. She had crossed an invisible line. She wasn't just the nanny anymore, and Lucas Maxwell was beginning to notice. The twins were asleep before the gala ended, their small bodies curled like commas beneath star-patterned blankets. Christine sat in the nursery's armchair, humming softly to fill the space where nightmares usually waited. Downstairs, music swelled, laughter rang, and wealth spun itself into louder stories. But here, in this quiet room overlooking the Lagos Lagoon, there was only the rhythm of children breathing. She didn't hear Lucas come in until the door clicked softly shut. They're out? He asked. Christine nodded. Stormproof. Something flickered in his eyes at that. Memory, gratitude, maybe even relief. He crossed the room, hands shoved into his pockets, shoulders taut. For a heartbeat, he seemed like a man on the edge of confession. Then his phone vibrated. He glanced at it, froze and his expression hardened into steel. "She's here," he muttered. "Who?" Christine asked, but he was already leaving. The lobby of the Echo Atlantic Ballroom was ablaze with light when Christine caught up. She almost wished she hadn't. Tall, elegant, wrapped in sequins that clung like armor, she was unmistakable. The kind of woman who turned heads and fed on the turning. Her hair gleamed, her diamond earrings caught the light like paparazzi bulbs. And when she smiled, it was the kind of smile that remembered being worshipped. "Lucas," she purred, "don't look so shocked." Christine froze in the shadow of a marble column, her breath caught. Valerie's expression was thunder, the security detail tense. But Lucas looked like a man staring at the ghost he had buried. "Lila," he said finally, voice flat. The name hung heavy. Lila Maxwell, mother in biology, stranger in fact. She tilted her chin, letting the chandelier scatter diamonds across her face. "Is that any way to greet the woman who made you a father?" Lucas's eyes narrowed. "You made me a father the day you signed those papers and took your 200 million naira settlement, the day you walked out without a single look at them." Christine's chest clenched. 200 million. She had heard whispers in the staff wing, but to hear it confirmed, like currency had been weighed against the cries of two newborns, made her stomach twist. Lila's smile didn't falter. "Don't be so dramatic. You wanted children. I wanted freedom. We both got what we wanted." She glanced at her manicured nails. "And don't forget, I signed immediately. No fight, no dragging it through the courts. You should be thanking me." Valerie bristled. "They were 2 hours old, Lila. You didn't even hold them." "They would have smudged my dress," she replied, bored. "And I don't do motherhood. Never did. That was your fantasy, Lucas, not mine. I only wanted the glitz, the galas, the magazine covers, the whole Mrs. Maxwell illusion." Her eyes sharpened suddenly, cutting. "But what I didn't want was you parading around with some nanny like she's the saint of your little kingdom." Christine's stomach lurched. "Me." Lucas's jaw flexed. "You left. You signed away every right. This," he gestured sharply toward the ballroom, "the house, the very life he had built, is none of your concern." Lila's laugh was silk wrapped around poison. "None of my concern? You think Lagos isn't buzzing already? That woman with my children at your side? The cameras eating it up? Don't fool yourself, Lucas. You can buy silence, but you can't buy erasure. And I won't be erased." "You erased yourself," Lucas bit back, his voice low but burning. "You traded your children for money. You don't get to rewrite the story because your pride is bruised." For a second, the glamour cracked. Lila's eyes flashed, raw with the sting of truth. Then the mask slid back. "We'll see, darling. Enjoy your picture-perfect nanny. Let's hope she doesn't burn under the spotlight the way I did." With that, she turned on her heel and disappeared into the night, leaving perfume and venom in her wake. Later, in the quiet of the mansion, Christine found Lucas alone in his office. The skyline glittered through the glass wall, but his reflection looked carved from shadow. "She doesn't want them," Christine said softly. She hadn't meant to speak, but the words tore themselves free. "No," Lucas answered, voice hoarse. "She never did." "Then why now?" He looked at her finally. The anger in his eyes was old, but the fear was new. "Because I moved on. Because she sees them happy. Because she can't stand that the routine we built without her is steady." Christine's throat tightened. "They don't know her. And they won't." His voice broke just slightly. "They'll never feel the way I did, unwanted in my own house." She stepped closer, heart pounding. "They won't. Not as long as you fight for them. Not as long as I'm here." Silence fell, charged and dangerous. Lucas studied her as though weighing whether she was a fortress or a weakness. The storm of the gala, the shadow of Lila's return, the fragile peace of the twins' laughter, all of it hung between them. And for the first time, Lucas Maxwell let his guard slip, just enough for Christine to see the man beneath the armor. A man who loved his children so fiercely it gutted him. A man who wanted nothing more than to protect them from ghosts that refused to stay buried. A man who, despite every reason not to, was beginning to want her. The storm of Lila's reappearance still lingered in the Maxwell mansion. Though she was gone, her perfume seemed to cling to the corners of the house like smoke, her words replaying in echoes Christine couldn't banish. Enjoy your picture-perfect nanny. Let's hope she doesn't burn under the spotlight the way I did. Christine tried to shake it off. She busied herself with routines, school runs, snacks cut into stars, bedtime stories performed with ridiculous voices. She smiled, laughed with the twins, and reminded herself that their safety, their joy, was why she was here. But Lucas was harder to read than ever. One evening, after a long day shadowed by whispers in the gossip columns, Christine found herself on the balcony outside the twins' nursery. The lagoon stretched beneath the moonlight, water trembling with the rhythm of the city. She leaned on the railing, letting the night air cool the heat of her thoughts. "You shouldn't be out here alone." His voice startled her. She turned, finding Lucas in the doorway. No suit tonight, just a black t-shirt and trousers, his bare feet silent against the marble. The rawness of him unsettled her more than the armor he usually wore. "I needed air," Christine said softly. "It's been a day." His jaw clenched. "Because of her." "She can't hurt them," Christine said quickly. "They're yours. You fought for them. You love them in ways she never could." Something flickered in his eyes. "And yet she still has the power to rattle the entire house." Christine didn't know what to say to that. She turned back toward the water. Power isn't the same as love. Silence. Then the sound of him stepping closer, his presence pressing against her back like gravity. She felt him before she heard him. "You keep saying things like that," Lucas murmured, "and I almost start believing you know me." Christine swallowed hard. Her heartbeat quickened, a traitor in her chest. "I don't know you," she said, her voice barely steady. "Not really." "Don't you?" He was close now, close enough that when she turned, her face nearly brushed his chest. She looked up and saw the storm in his eyes. Anger, yes, pain, certainly, but also something darker, hotter, more dangerous. "I told myself you were a distraction," he said, voice low, "that you were just here for the twins, that I could ignore you." Christine's breath caught. And I can't." The words hit like a match to kindling. Heat roared through her veins. For a suspended moment, everything, the lagoon, the city, the weight of the past, fell away. There was only his eyes on hers, the space between them charged, their breaths colliding. She should have stepped back. She knew she should, but her body betrayed her, leaning forward, just enough to cross into dangerous territory. "Lucas!" Her voice trembled. "We can't!" His jaw tightened. He searched her face as though looking for permission, for denial, for anything that would break the spell. His hand lifted, hovering near her cheek, but never touching, as if he knew that one brush would unravel everything. "You're right," he said hoarsely. "We can't." And yet he didn't move. Neither did she. They stood suspended, every nerve begging for the line to be crossed, every thought screaming that it would ruin everything. A cry shattered it. "Daddy!" Sloane's small voice drifted from the nursery, sleepy and fragile. The spell broke. Lucas jerked back, dragging in a harsh breath. Christine turned quickly, her hands shaking as she pushed past him. Inside, Sloane sat up in bed, rubbing her eyes. "The storm is loud," she whispered. Christine tucked the blanket tighter around her. "Shh, baby. The storm can't get you here. You're safe." Lucas stood in the doorway, watching. His shoulders were tense, his face shadowed. Christine knew he wouldn't step closer. Not now, not after what had almost happened. When Sloane finally drifted back to sleep, Christine rose. Lucas's eyes met hers across the room. Lines. Fragile, invisible, already fraying. "We won't cross them," Christine whispered, though she wasn't sure if she was promising him, herself, or the children asleep between them. He nodded once, a sharp motion, and turned away. But the truth burned between them like Lagos lightning. They already had. The mansion was quieter after that night on the balcony, but it was not peace. It was restraint. Lucas avoided her eyes at breakfast, yet lingered a second too long when Sawyer climbed into her lap. He spoke in clipped tones during school runs, but Christine caught him watching her reflection in the rearview mirror. At bedtime, when she read with her terrible ogre voice, he stood in the doorway in silence, as though the sound of his children's laughter tethered him to a place he didn't want to leave. And Christine felt it all, the way the air changed when he entered a room, the way her pulse quickened when his hand brushed hers over a toy. An accident they both pretended not to notice. She told herself it was nothing. She told herself she could control it. But at night, lying in her small room in the staff wing, she felt the heat of his gaze still burning on her skin. Lucas was fighting too. He buried himself in work, staying late at Maxwell Holdings, drowning in numbers and board politics. But the harder he worked, the sharper the distraction became. Christine wasn't like Lila. She wasn't perfume and ambition and glittering indifference. She was warmth. She was loyalty. She was real. And he hated himself for wanting her because it meant opening doors he had welded shut long ago. Then came the headline: Lucas Maxwell's mystery woman, nanny or new lover. It hit the gossip blogs like fire on dry grass. Photos from the gala splashed across every screen, Christine clutching the twins protectively. Lucas beside her, his hand angled as though shielding all three of them from the press. The caption twisted it into scandal. By noon, his office was under siege with calls from investors and journalists. By 3, Valerie stormed into the mansion, phone in hand, voice sharp. "This isn't about you, Chris," she said, pacing. "This is about them. Lucas can't afford rumors right now. His merger with Eden Oil is weeks away, and they're already circling for weakness." Christine felt the floor tilt beneath her. "So I'm the weakness?" "You're the story," Valerie corrected. Softer now, but no less brutal. "And in this city, stories destroy legacies." She turned to Lucas, who had been standing silent by the window, his back rigid, his shadow long against the marble. "Say something," Christine whispered. His silence roared. Finally, he turned. His face was expressionless, but his eyes were hard, cold, the CEO mask in full force. "You need to leave, for their sake." The words sliced through her like knives. "Leave? It's temporary," Valerie interjected quickly. "Until the heat dies down. We'll frame it as a contract lapse." But Christine wasn't listening to her. She was staring at Lucas. "You know I didn't leak that story. You know I would never." His jaw tightened. "It doesn't matter what I know. It matters what they believe. And right now, Christine, you're a liability." "Liability?" She flinched as though he had struck her. She had been called worse, unwanted, orphan, useless, but this cut deeper because it came from him. The man she had nearly kissed under moonlight. The man she had begun, against all reason, to trust. Her throat closed. She wanted to scream, to demand that he fight for her, the way she fought for his children. But Sloane and Sawyer were in the next room, laughing at cartoons, blissfully unaware that their world was being ripped apart. Christine swallowed her pride, her heart, her everything. "Fine," she said, her voice steady even as her soul splintered. "I'll pack." She turned before he could see the tears. The twins clung to her when she told them. "Why?" Sloane whispered. Her little fingers knotted in Christine's blouse. "Did we do something wrong?" "No, sweetheart," Christine whispered back, fighting to breathe. "You did everything right. You made me feel home. But sometimes grown-ups make choices we don't understand." Sawyer's eyes brimmed. "Don't go." Her heart cracked wide open. She kissed their foreheads, memorizing the weight of them in her arms, the smell of strawberry shampoo and crayons. "I'll always love you, no matter where I am." When she stood to leave, Sloane's cry followed her down the marble hallway. "Dragon tamers don't leave." Christine bit her lip until it bled. Lucas watched from the balcony as her small suitcase was loaded into a waiting taxi. Every instinct screamed at him to stop her, to take back his words, to tell her that she wasn't a liability, but the very heartbeat of his home. But pride, fear, kept him still. Valerie's voice was sharp behind him. "Do you realize what you've done?" He didn't answer. Because in that moment, watching Christine's figure vanish beyond the gates, Lucas Maxwell realized the truth. He hadn't just lost a nanny. He had lost the one person who saw the man beneath the armor. And for the first time in years, the ruthless billionaire who conquered boardrooms and silenced rivals felt utterly, devastatingly helpless. The Maxwell mansion was quieter without her, but it wasn't peace. It was hollow. Christine's absence spread through the house like a bruise. The kitchen was still stocked, the staff still polished marble and glass. The lagoon still glittered outside the windows, but the warmth had vanished. There were no star-shaped sandwiches on the counter, no bedtime stories echoing down the hall, no terrible ogre voices chasing nightmares away. And the twins noticed. By the third night without Christine, Sawyer refused to eat his dinner. He sat at the long table with his arms folded, his dimple vanished under a scowl. Sloane dragged her blanket into the living room and curled on the sofa, staring at the door as if sheer will could summon Christine back. "Daddy," she said softly, "when is she coming home?" Lucas felt the words like a blade twisting in his chest. "She's not gone forever," he tried. "She just needed a break." Sawyer's eyes burned. "That's a lie." The boy's voice was small, but it cracked through Lucas's defenses. He had told lies before. Whole empires were built on carefully constructed truths, but never to them. Never to his children. That night when the twins finally cried themselves into restless sleep, Lucas stood on the balcony with the lagoon sprawling beneath him. He could feel the walls of his life closing in. Eden Oil's merger hung by a thread. Investors whispered about the scandal. The press buzzed with speculation about the nanny who disappeared. And beneath it all, his children were breaking in silence. He couldn't allow it. He wouldn't. The fight would be twofold, like everything in his life. He would protect his empire with one hand and fight for Christine with the other. The next morning, Lucas strode into the boardroom of Maxwell Holdings. The executives murmured nervously. Tabloids spread like poison in their briefcases. Before anyone could speak, Lucas set his phone on the polished oak table. A slideshow appeared on the screen. Photographs of Christine with the twins, not from paparazzi, but from his own staff archives. Sawyer laughing with his head thrown back as Christine pretended to juggle apples. Sloane leaning against Christine's arm during a story, her eyes soft with trust. Christine crouched at their level, her face lit with genuine joy. "This," Lucas said, his voice low but cutting, "is the woman your headlines call a liability. This is the person my children slept through storms for. The one who restored stability to my house after their mother traded them for money." The room stilled. "Eden Oil can pull the merger if they want," he went on. "But if they think they'll use my family as leverage, they've chosen the wrong man." His gaze swept across the table, each executive shrinking under its weight. "Maxwell Holdings will stand, with or without them. Now either get behind me or get out of my sight." Silence. Then one by one heads nodded. The fight for his empire was won, for now. But the harder battle was still waiting. That evening, Lucas drove himself through the buzzing streets of Ikoyi, his car slicing past neon signs and okadoras weaving like sparks. He stopped in front of a modest block of serviced apartments, the kind Christine could barely afford on her own. She answered the door with surprise, hardening quickly into caution. "Lucas." He had rehearsed what to say, but the sight of her, the way her hair tumbled loose, the exhaustion under her eyes, knocked the words from him. For a moment, he was just a man who missed her. "I shouldn't have let you go," he said finally. "Not like that." Christine's jaw tightened. "You didn't let me go. You pushed me out. I thought I was protecting them, protecting everything I built. He dragged a hand over his face, frustrated. But without you, Christine, the house is broken. They're broken, and his voice cracked, unwilling but unstoppable. So am I. She blinked, as if the admission were too dangerous to trust. Lucas, I'm not asking you to forgive me tonight, he said quickly. I'm asking you to come home. For them, they need you. He hesitated, then added, quieter, I need you. Christine's heart twisted. She wanted to resist, to remind him of the way he had called her a liability, the way his silence had cut deeper than his words. But behind his eyes she saw truth. Not the ruthless CEO, not the arrogant billionaire, but the father who sat on a bed during a storm and held his children's trembling hands. And she thought of Sloane's voice breaking, "Dragon tamers don't leave." She closed her eyes. One condition. Name it. No more pushing me out when things get hard. If I'm in this, I'm in it. For them, for you, but I won't survive being treated like I don't matter. Lucas stepped closer, his presence swallowing the space. You matter, Christine, more than I wanted to admit, more than I know how to handle. Her throat ached. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then she nodded, tears hot in her eyes. I'll come back. When Christine returned to the mansion, the twins ran so fast they nearly knocked her over. Sloane clutched her hand with both of hers, tears spilling. Sawyer buried his face against her stomach, refusing to let go. See? Christine whispered, pressing kisses to their heads. Dragon tamers always come back. Over their shoulders, her eyes met Lucas's. For the first time, he didn't hide behind silence. His gaze was fierce, unguarded, a vow burning through the air between them. The fight wasn't over. Not with the city, not with the ghosts of the past. But Christine knew one thing now. Lucas Maxwell would fight for her. And this time, he wouldn't let go. The mansion breathed again. Christine's return filled the halls with a warmth that had been missing, like someone had opened a window in a house that had been suffocating. The twins practically glued themselves to her side, following her from kitchen to garden to nursery, as though terrified she might vanish again. Sloane refused to sleep unless Christine sat at the edge of her bed. Sawyer demanded extra story time, his little hand clutching hers long after his eyes slid shut. The staff, though too discreet to comment, moved lighter, their faces softened as though they too had been holding their breath. But for Christine, walking back into this home was like stepping onto fragile glass. The twins' love made it easier, yes, but Lucas was another matter. He tried. God, he tried. When she entered the kitchen in the morning, he was there, his tie askew, holding out her coffee exactly the way she took it. When the twins tugged her to join their Saturday morning dance-off in the living room, he stood in the doorway watching, his mouth twitching as though he'd forgotten how to smile, but was relearning. When Christine tucked the children into bed at night, he lingered in the hall, silent, as though afraid to intrude but unable to walk away. And yet words weren't enough. Every time Christine looked at him, she saw the man who had once called her a liability, who had stood in silence when she needed him to fight. She had returned for the twins, yes, but for Lucas, she needed more than apologies spoken in low tones. She needed proof. It came one afternoon when a journalist tried to ambush them outside Elysian Academy. Christine had just ushered Sloane and Sawyer into the car when a woman with a microphone stepped in front of her, cameraman at her side. Miss Channing, is it true you're romantically involved with Lucas Maxwell? She demanded, shoving the mic toward her face. Are you the reason his ex-wife? Christine froze, shielding the twins with her body. Heat rushed through her chest, panic threatening to strangle her. Before she could answer, Lucas's voice thundered from behind. She doesn't answer to you, he snapped, striding forward, his security detail clearing the way. He placed himself between Christine and the cameras, his arms stretching back to pull her and the children behind him. His face was sharp as a blade, his voice steady and lethal. One more step, one more question, and I will bury your story and your career. You don't get to terrorize my family. The word family landed like a drumbeat. Christine's breath caught. The journalist faltered, retreating under the full weight of his fury. The cameras lowered, and just like that, they were gone. Lucas turned, his chest rising and falling. His eyes found Christine's. "You shouldn't have to fight alone," he said, his voice raw. "Not here. Not ever." Her throat tightened. It wasn't just a promise. It was a declaration. And though she didn't answer, her silence this time wasn't rejection. It was the kind of silence that held space for something to grow. The twins felt it too. That evening, they refused to let Lucas retreat into his office. "Dinner," Sawyer declared, tugging at his father's sleeve. "All of us, at the same table." Lucas hesitated. His schedule was brutal, his phone already buzzing with unanswered calls. But then Christine's eyes lifted, waiting, not commanding, but hoping. He turned the phone face down. "Dinner," he agreed. They ate together for the first time without tension. Pancakes, because Sawyer insisted. Mango slices, because Sloane claimed it was dragon food. And laughter, bubbling between bites, softening even Lucas's hard edges. Christine watched him lean back in his chair, listening to Sawyer's dinosaur impressions, smiling faintly as Sloane braided a crooked crown into his hair. For the first time since she'd met him, Lucas Maxwell didn't look like a man carrying the weight of the world. He looked like a father. And something more. Her chest ached. She wanted to believe this could last, that he could be the man she glimpsed beneath the armor. But ghosts had long shadows, and Lila was still out there, waiting to strike again. Christine knew peace in this house was fragile. But as she tucked the twins into bed later that night, their small voices whispering, "Don't leave again," she made a silent vow. She wasn't going anywhere, not unless Lucas pushed her away again. And from the way he had looked at her across the dinner table, fire burning behind restraint, Christine wasn't sure he had the strength to do it a second time. The storm broke on a Sunday afternoon. Christine had taken the twins to a charity fair in Victoria Island. Balloons, face paint, the smell of popcorn rising above the chatter. She had promised them a day of normalcy, a world where they could just be children. But Lagos had other plans. Reporters descended, cameras flashing, microphones stabbing questions into the air. "Christine, are you and Lucas Maxwell living together? Are you his lover or just a help? Did you replace his ex-wife?" Sloane clutched Christine's hand, trembling. Sawyer's lip quivered. Christine's heart thundered. She bent low, whispering, "Eyes on me, dragons. Just me. You're safe." And then the crowd parted. Lucas Maxwell strode into the chaos like thunder given form. Security fanned out, but it was Lucas himself who drew every eye. He moved straight to Christine and the twins, his arms sweeping protectively around them. Cameras clicked like gunfire. "Enough," Lucas said, his voice carrying over the crowd, dark and steady as a storm. The reporters froze. Lagos elite had seen him ruthless in boardrooms, icy in mergers. But they had never seen him like this. He pulled Sloane close, pressed his palm against Sawyer's small back, and turned to face the cameras head on. "You want your story? Here it is." His voice cracked like lightning. "Christine Channing is not a scandal. She is not a liability. She is the reason my children laugh again, the reason my home isn't hollow. She is family. Ours." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone's camera shook, recording every word. "She didn't replace anyone," Lucas continued, his gaze slicing through the sea of lenses. "Because no one was ever there for them until she came. And if you want to come after someone, you come after me. But you do not touch her. You do not frighten my children. That ends today." The silence that followed was absolute. Christine's eyes stung, tears threatening. She looked up at him, her heart breaking and healing all at once. The twins clung tighter, Sawyer's small voice whispering, "Daddy's fighting." The rain began as if on cue, soft at first, then heavier, a downpour sweeping across the fairground. Reporters scattered, their equipment shielded under coats. But Lucas didn't move. He stood in the rain, arms still around his family, letting the water soak his suit, his hair, his carefully curated armor. Christine had never seen him so raw, so unashamed. And when his eyes met hers, there was no mistaking it. He wasn't hiding anymore. Later, back at the mansion, Christine tucked the twins into bed, their faces peaceful, safe. When she stepped into the hall, Lucas was waiting. He looked different, tired, soaked to the bone still, but stripped of every mask. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "Yes, I did," he said simply. "I should have done it weeks ago." Christine's throat closed. "And tomorrow, when the headlines twisted again? When investors ask questions?" He stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers. "Then I fight again, and again, and as many times as it takes. Because I won't lose you, Christine. Not to them, not to fear, not to myself." Her chest ached with the truth of it. She searched his face for doubt, for hesitation. There was none. Only the man he had become, the one who sat through thunderstorms, who made Saturday breakfasts with mango slices, who stood in the rain and called her family. "Say it again," she whispered. He reached for her hand, holding it like a vow. "You're ours." And for the first time since she had met him, Christine believed it. The next morning was simple. Sunlight spilled across the kitchen, painting everything gold. Christine stood at the counter, slicing strawberries into stars, while the twins argued over who could pour the syrup. Lucas leaned against the island, sleeves rolled, watching them with a smile he no longer tried to hide. It wasn't the grand galas, the glass walls, or the empire outside that mattered. It was this: pancakes, laughter, hands sticky with syrup, and the sound of children who finally felt safe. Christine caught Lucas's gaze across the room. He mouthed, "Thank you." She shook her head softly. "No, thank you." Because after all the storms, after all the ghosts and battles, the truth was simple. They were a family now, not perfect, not untouchable, but real. And real was more powerful than any empire. The rain had stopped, and Christine Channing was home.